I didn't stop eating meat to be difficult. I didn't do it for attention. I did it because my stomach couldn't handle it anymore, and because after a scare 2 years ago, blood work, inflammation markers, a doctor looking me in the eyes and saying, "Your body is screaming at you," I finally started listening. I went mostly vegetarian, and it changed my life. Less pain. More energy. No more waking up nauseous. It wasn't a trend. It was health. My family knew that. At least I thought they did. I told them 100 times. I kept it simple. "I don't eat meat," I'd say. "I'll bring a dish. Don't worry about me." Every time, my mom would roll her eyes like I was announcing a new personality. "Oh my God," she'd sigh. "Here we go again." My dad would chuckle and call it rabbit food. My sister Laura would smirk and say, "So you're better than us now?" It always came with a joke, a dig, a little sting disguised as family humor. But I still believed deep down that when it mattered, when I sat at their table, they would at least try. Then my mom invited me to Sunday dinner. She sounded cheerful on the phone, almost sweet. "Come over," she said. "We're doing a real family meal. Your aunt's coming. I want everyone together." The phrase "everyone together" used to make my chest tighten because it meant I'd be outnumbered. But I said yes anyway because a part of me still craved the fantasy version of my family, the one where dinner felt like warmth, not a test. I drove over with a container of roasted vegetables and a chickpea salad just in case. My safety plan. I knocked, stepped inside, and immediately smelled it. Roasting meat. Heavy, greasy, undeniable. My stomach tightened on instinct. Mom greeted me with a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hey, sweetheart," she said, air-kissing my cheek like we were close. Kitchen was loud, pots clanging, voices talking over each other. Dad was at the stove, basting something glossy and brown. Laura was at the counter arranging plates. My aunt sat at the table with a glass of wine, already in that smug, "let's see what she does this time" posture. I set my container down and tried to stay calm. "Smells strong," I said carefully. Mom laughed. "Your dad went all out," she said. "Prime rib. Real food." Dad turned, holding the baster like a trophy. "You're welcome," he said, grinning. My stomach dropped. "Is there anything without meat?" I asked gently. Dad blinked. Laura's eyebrows lifted like she'd been waiting for that line. Mom's smile tightened. "Oh my God," she said, laughing like it was hilarious. "I forgot you're doing that again." Again. Like health was a phase. "I'm not doing it again," I said calmly. "I haven't eaten meat in 2 years." Dad waved his hand. "Just pick around it," he said. "It won't kill you." My chest tightened. "It might," I said quietly, not as a joke. "It makes me sick." My aunt took a slow sip of wine. "Here we go," she murmured. Laura smirked. "So, are we supposed to cook a whole separate meal for you?" she asked, dripping with fake innocence. I felt heat rise in my face. "No," I said quickly. "I brought food." You brought that," Mom interrupted, glancing at my container like it was a dead rat. "Anna, it's Sunday dinner. We cooked. We don't need your special stuff." "It's not special," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "It's just what I eat." Dad set the baster down with a clank. "You know what I think?" he said, turning toward me like he was about to deliver a TED Talk. My stomach sank. 'Cause I knew this tone. This wasn't about dinner anymore. It was about them taking my boundary and turning it into a stage for their opinions. "I think," Dad continued, "all these diets are in your head. You read something online, you decide you're fragile, and then you make it everyone else's problem." Laura nodded like he was preaching. "It's like you want to be offended," she added. My aunt leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "In my day," she said, "people ate what was served. They didn't make a scene." I stared at them, stunned. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't demanded anything. I'd asked if there was a side dish I could eat, and they were acting like I'd insulted the family flag. Mom clapped her hands like she was concluding something. "Just sit," she said briskly. "We'll eat, and you can stop being dramatic." Dramatic is the word they used to keep me quiet. I looked at the table. 4 plates already set. 4 portions of prime rib. No extra salad. No vegetables except butter-soaked potatoes. It hit me then, they didn't forget. Not really. They just didn't care enough to remember. And the lecture was the point. The meat was bait. The lecture was the meal they actually wanted to serve me. Humiliation, invalidation, control. I set my container down slowly, hands steady. And for a second, nobody spoke, like they were waiting to see if I'd do what I always did. Smile, shrink, pretend it was fine. I didn't. I lifted my gaze. "So," I said quietly, "I drove here to be fed, and you prepared a punishment instead." Dad scoffed. "Oh, here we go," he muttered. Mom's eyes narrowed. "Don't start," she snapped. Laura smiled like she'd finally gotten entertainment. And in that moment, with the smell of meat thick in the air and their smug faces around the table, I realized something terrifying and freeing. This dinner wasn't a mistake. It was a test. And they expected me to fail it the way I always had, by eating whatever they served and swallowing the disrespect with it. Not this time. I pulled out a chair and sat down anyway, not because I was going to eat their meat, but because I wanted to see how far they'd take it if I didn't immediately leave. Sometimes you need to witness the pattern clearly to stop doubting yourself. Mom slid the platter onto the table like she was presenting a prize. Prime rib glistened under the light, sliced thick, pink in the middle, surrounded by juices that looked rich enough to make my stomach flip. Dad carved with exaggerated care, like he was performing masculinity. Laura held out her plate with a smirk. My aunt watched me with that familiar look, half amusement, half judgment, like she was waiting for me to embarrass myself so she could feel superior. Dad set a plate in front of me. A giant slab of meat and a scoop of potatoes drowned in gravy. No salad. No vegetables. Nothing I could eat without getting sick. I stared at it for a beat. Then I pushed the plate back slightly. "I'm not eating that," I said calmly. Dad's knife paused midair. "Seriously?" he said, already irritated. "Yes," I replied. "I told you. I don't eat meat." Mom let out a laugh that was too sharp to be humor. "Anna," she said, "it's one meal. You're not allergic. You're just being you." "I am being me," I said evenly. "Me is the person whose stomach cramps for 2 days if I eat that." Laura leaned forward, voice sweet with poison. "So what do you want us to do?" she asked. "Serve you your little rabbit salad like you're royalty?" I didn't take the bait. "I brought food," I said, gesturing to my container. "I can eat that." Dad frowned like I'd insulted his cooking. "We didn't make dinner so you could eat from a plastic tub," he snapped. "Then you should have made something I can eat," I replied quietly. The room went still. Because I'd said the thing they hate most, a simple, reasonable truth that makes their cruelty look obvious. Mom's face hardened. "We are not catering to you," she said. "This is a family meal." "Exactly," I said. Family usually remembers basic things about each other. My aunt made a small clicking sound with her tongue. "Oh, for heaven's sake," she muttered. "It's food. The people are starving and you're making it about your feelings." Dad nodded like she dropped wisdom. "See? That's what I'm saying," he said, pointing his fork at me. "You make everything about you." I stared at him. "You're the one who cooked prime rib knowing I don't eat meat," I said calmly. "If anyone made this about me, it was you." Laura's smile tightened. "You're always accusing," she said. "Because you're always doing things that need accusing," I replied before I could stop myself. The words landed heavy. Mom's eyes widened like I'd slapped her. Dad's jaw clenched. "Watch your mouth," he snapped. I took a breath. "I'm watching it," I said. "I'm also watching this table." Dad set his fork down. "You know what your problem is?" he said, voice rising. "You think being healthy makes you superior. You think we're ignorant because we eat normal food." Laura nodded, piling meat onto her fork like she was proving a point. "It's the vibe," she said. "Always this judgment." I blinked. "I never judged you," I said. "I literally just said I can't eat meat." My aunt waved her hand. "It's always something," she said. "First it's meat. Then it's gluten. Then it's trauma. Then it's boundaries. You can't just be normal for one day. Trauma. Boundaries." She said it like I collected problems as hobbies. My stomach twisted, but my voice stayed calm. "Normal for you," I said, "means silent for me." Dad scoffed. "Oh my God," he muttered. "Here comes the therapy talk." Mom pointed at the plate in front of me like it was evidence. "Either eat what's served," she said, "or stop coming to these dinners." There it was. The real goal. Compliance or exile. She wanted control more than connection. I stared at her, then at my father, then at Laura. 3 faces that looked like family and felt like a jury. "You realize how insane this is," I said quietly. "You invited me. You cooked something you know I can't eat. And now you're threatening to exclude me because I won't make myself sick to keep you comfortable." Dad's cheeks flushed. "Stop twisting it," he snapped. "We cooked a nice meal. You're rejecting it." I nodded slowly. "No," I said. "You're rejecting me." Silence. The only sound was Dad's knife scraping against the cutting board. Laura's fork tapping her plate. My aunt sipping her wine like she was enjoying a show. Mom crossed her arms. "So, what are you going to do?" she asked, tone challenging. I looked down at my plate, at the meat, the gravy, the heavy smell that already made my stomach revolt. Then I looked back up, steady. "I'm going to eat my food," I said. "And if that's not allowed at your table, then this table isn't for family. It's for control." Dad laughed, short and mean. "Oh, please," he said. "Don't act like a martyr." I reached for my container anyway. I opened it slowly, the lid popping with a small, quiet sound that felt louder than any of their voices. Roasted vegetables. Chickpeas. Something that wouldn't hurt me. Something I had prepared for myself because I'd learned not to rely on them. Mom stared at it like it was an insult. "That is so disrespectful," she said. "Disrespectful," I repeated, calm. "More disrespectful than inviting me to dinner and giving me nothing I can eat?" Laura leaned back, eyes gleaming. "You're really doing this," she said, delighted. Dad shook his head like I was a lost cause. And that's when my father stood up, grabbed my container, and did something so petty and cruel it made my blood run cold. He lifted it, my food, my only option, and walked toward the trash. "If you're going to embarrass us," he said, voice tight, "you can do it somewhere else." My heart lurched. "Dad," I said sharply, standing up. "Don't you dare." He hovered over the trash can. Mom watched without stopping him. Laura smirked. My aunt looked almost pleased. In that split second, I understood. This wasn't about meat. This was about obedience. And they were willing to starve me, literally, if it meant I'd comply. My hands clenched at my sides, trembling with controlled rage. "Put it down," I said, voice low. Dad's eyes flashed. "Or what?" he challenged. Question hung there, identical to the one my father in the last story had asked. And I realized my answer was going to define the rest of our relationship. Because if I let him throw my food away, I would be agreeing, silently, that my body and my boundaries belonged to them. I didn't scream. I didn't lunge. I didn't beg. I just stepped forward calmly, So calmly it made my dad hesitate for half a second, then I reached out and took my container out of his hand. Not yanking. Not dramatic. Just a clean, deliberate reclaiming. Like I was taking back something that never should have left my control. "No," I said, voice steady. "You're not doing that." My dad's face flushed red. "Give it back," he snapped, like my food belonged to him because it was on his property. I set the container on the table next to my plate and kept my hands visible. "This is my dinner," I said evenly. "And you don't get to throw it away because you're embarrassed." Mom's eyes narrowed into slits. "Anna," she said slowly, "you're being disrespectful in front of your aunt." I looked at her. "You're trying to starve me in front of your aunt," I replied. Silence. Laura's mouth twitched, not amused now, uncertain. Because calling it out that plainly made it sound as ugly as it was. Dad pointed at my container. "You're making a scene," he barked. I tilted my head. "The only scene happening," I said, "is you hovering my food over a trash can like a tantrum." My aunt scoffed loudly. "Oh, stop," she snapped. "Nobody is starving you. Just eat what's served." I kept my voice calm. "I won't," I said. "And that's not negotiable." Dad laughed, sharp and angry. "Who do you think you are?" He demanded. "You come into my house and set rules?" I didn't flinch. "I'm not setting rules for your house," I said. "I'm setting rules for my body." Mom's lips curled. "Your body," she repeated, mocking. "So dramatic." Laura leaned forward, voice dripping with fake curiosity. "Are you going to start crying next?" That hit something deep. Not because it was clever, but because it was familiar, how they trained me to associate emotion with humiliation. I felt my throat tighten. Then I breathed through it. "No," I said quietly. "I'm going to eat." I took a fork from the drawer calmly, scooped a bite of chickpeas, and put it in my mouth. The act was so simple, so peaceful, it felt like a rebellion. My mom stared like I'd spat in her face. "Unbelievable," she whispered. My dad slammed his hand on the table. "This is not how we do dinner," he snapped. I swallowed, then looked at him steadily. "Then you don't know how to do dinner with me," I said. His eyes widened, rage flickering. "Oh, so now we have to learn your lifestyle," he mocked. I nodded once. "If you want me here, yes," I said. "Because this isn't a lifestyle. It's my health." Mom waved her hand dismissively. "You're exaggerating. Your stomach will survive one meal." "Maybe," I said, "but our relationship won't survive you ignoring my boundaries on purpose." That made Dad's jaw clench. "On purpose," he repeated. "You think we did this on purpose?" I didn't raise my voice. "You've known for 2 years," I said. "You made a roast big enough to feed the neighborhood. You set 4 plates with meat. You didn't make a single side dish I can eat. And the moment I tried to eat my own food, Dad tried to throw it away." I let that sink in. "That's not forgetting," I said quietly. "That's a message." My aunt's face hardened. "What message?" she snapped. I looked at her. "That I'm only welcome if I comply," I said. Laura rolled her eyes. "Oh my God," she muttered. "You're so victim-why." I turned to her, calm. "Laura," I said, "if you had a food restriction, if you couldn't eat dairy or gluten or peanuts, and I invited you to dinner and served nothing but cheese and bread, would you call yourself victim-why for not wanting to get sick?" She didn't answer. She looked away. 'Cause she knew the answer. Dad scoffed, trying to rescue the control. "That's different," he said. "No, it isn't," I replied. "You just respect some boundaries more than mine." Mom snapped, "because yours are ridiculous." I felt the last thread inside me fray. Not rage, clarity. "Okay," I said softly. "If you think my health is ridiculous, then I won't be eating here anymore." Mom's eyes flashed. Fine, she said coldly. Then don't. There it was again. The threat they always used, exile, except this time she offered it like she was daring me to stay. Dad leaned back, smug now that he thought he'd won. Good, he muttered. Maybe you'll stop with this nonsense. I looked around the table, at my aunt's satisfied expression, at Laura's half-smile, at my mom's tight mouth, at my dad's pride in putting me in my place. And in that moment, the weirdest thing happened. I stopped wanting their approval. I stopped wanting to be understood. I just wanted to leave. I put my fork down gently. You're right, I said calmly. I won't eat here. Dad blinked, thrown off by my calmness. Good, he repeated, expecting me to crumble. I picked up my container, snapped the lid on, and stood. I'm leaving, I said. Mom's head snapped up. Leaving? Now? Yes, I replied. Because I came for dinner and you served me a lecture. Dad stood too. Don't be ridiculous, he barked. Sit down. I met his eyes. No, I said quietly. You had a chance to treat me like family. You chose to treat me like a problem. Mom's voice sharpened. If you walk out, don't expect us to chase you. I nodded. I'm not walking out to be chased, I said. I'm walking out to be safe. That made the room go quiet. Safe. A word that didn't belong in their narrative. Laura laughed nervously. Safe from what exactly? Prime rib. I looked at her. Safe from a family that would rather control me than feed me, I said. I headed for the door. Dad followed, voice rising. You are so ungrateful, he shouted. I didn't turn back. I just said one sentence over my shoulder, the sentence that hit hardest because it was true. Ungrateful is what you call someone when they stop accepting scraps. And I left. Cold air outside hit my face like clarity. My hands were shaking around the container, but my chest felt strangely light. In my car, I stared at the steering wheel and realized something. I wasn't hungry. Not really. I was angry. And beneath the anger was grief, for the version of family dinner I'd always wanted and never gotten. My phone buzzed before I even started the engine. Mom, don't come back until you can apologize. I stared at the text, then set my phone face down. Because for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to fix it. I felt the urge to protect myself. And then I drove home, where I could eat without being punished for it. The next morning I woke up with that familiar post-conflict hangover. Not guilt exactly, more like my body still expected punishment for saying no. My shoulders ached like I'd been bracing all night. My stomach was empty, but for the first time it wasn't knotted from stress eating or shame. I made oatmeal, ate slowly, and let the quiet of my apartment remind my nervous system that I was safe. Then my phone started buzzing. First, Dad. Dad, you embarrassed your mother. Next, Mom. Mom, I cannot believe you humiliated us in front of your Then Laura. Laura, everyone thinks you're insane. You really walked out over food? The messages came fast, like they'd planned it. Same strategy, 3 voices. Frame me as dramatic so they didn't have to face what they'd done. I stared at the screen, steady. Old me would have typed paragraphs explaining. New me knew better. Explanations are a trap. They turn your boundary into a debate, and my family treated debate like sport. So I did the one thing they hated most. I replied with a single sentence. Me, I won't discuss this unless you can acknowledge you served me nothing I can eat. Silence for 5 minutes. Then Mom responded. Mom, we cooked a nice meal. You chose to be difficult. I felt my jaw tighten. I took a breath. Me, Dad tried to throw my food in the trash. That's not nice. Another pause. Then Dad, I was making a point. There it was, confession dressed as justification. I stared at the words making a point until my vision sharpened. Making a point meant obey. It meant the meat wasn't the issue. Me refusing to comply was. I replied, "Me, your point was control. Mine is health." End of conversation. Then I muted the thread. Not blocked. Muted. A calm boundary. You don't get immediate access to me when you're angry. I went to work, tried to focus, and for a few hours it felt like I'd won a small battle. Then around lunchtime, my coworker Maya sent me a screenshot with one line. "Is this your mom?" My stomach dropped. I opened it. My mother had posted on Facebook. Not naming me directly, but it was obvious. Some people come to family dinner and think they can disrespect the home, refuse the food, and storm out to play victim. I raised my children to be grateful, but apparently TikTok therapy teaches them otherwise. Comments poured in underneath, friends, relatives, random people. "Kids are so entitled. I would never speak to my mother that way." "You tried, Mama." My throat tightened. Post was designed perfectly. Vague enough to deny. Specific enough to shame me. And the worst part? My aunt had commented, "Iman, she needs to grow up." I stared at the screen until my hands went cold. This was the part my family always did after private control failed. Public humiliation. Because shame was their favorite weapon, and public shame was their sharpest blade. Old me would have panicked. Would have tried to prove myself in the comments like a teenager. Would have typed a long, emotional explanation and ended up looking exactly like the dramatic daughter they described. I didn't. I closed the app. Then I did something quieter and more effective. I took a screenshot of the post. I saved it. Evidence. Reality. Then I texted my mother privately one line. "Me, if you talk about me online again, you lose access to me for 30 days. Her response was immediate. "Mom, you are threatening me?" I stared at it. Then I replied with the simplest truth I'd ever learned. "Me, I'm defining consequences." She didn't respond for a while. Then Dad called. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail that sounded like he was trying to stay calm and failing. "Anna, your mother is upset. You need to stop this nonsense. Just apologize. Eat what we serve next time. It's not hard. Eat what we serve." Like I was a child. Like my health was a tantrum. Like respect only flowed one direction. I deleted the voicemail without replying. That night, Laura texted me again. "Laura, why can't you just be normal for one dinner?" I stared at her message longer than the others. Because Laura wasn't just repeating Mom's script, she actually believed it. She'd lived her whole life in the golden child lane where comfort was automatic and boundaries were optional. I typed back slowly. "Me, normal for you is me being silent. I'm done." Then I put my phone down and sat at my kitchen table, breathing. Part of me still wanted to fix it. Still wanted to be the daughter who kept the family image intact. But another part of me, a newer part, was finally asking a better question. What am I actually protecting? Their reputation? Their pride? Their comfort? Or my own body? My own dignity? My own peace? The next morning, I got an email from my aunt. Not a text. An email, like she wanted it to feel official. The subject line said, "You owe your mother an apology." My stomach tightened, but my mind stayed clear. Because I saw the pattern now like a map. Step 1. Create a situation where I can't win. Step 2. Mock my boundary. Step 3. When I refuse, call me dramatic. Step 4. Shame me publicly. Step 5. Demand apology so they can feel in control again. I stared at the email, then did the thing that would change everything. I didn't defend. I didn't beg. I wrote back one sentence that turned the whole dynamic upside down. And the second I hit send, I knew the old family version of me was gone for good. I reread my aunt's email twice. Not because I didn't understand it, but because a small, old part of me still wanted to. The part that hoped there was a hidden "we love you" underneath the judgment. There wasn't. It was a demand letter. An invoice for my silence. I opened a blank reply and typed one sentence. Just one. No emotion. No argument. No essay. I'm happy to apologize when my health is treated with basic respect and my food isn't threatened with the trash. I hit send. Then I closed my laptop like I'd just placed a chess piece. 10 minutes later, my phone exploded. Mom, how dare you? Dad, this is ridiculous. Laura, you're making this so much bigger. And then the final one from my aunt. Aunt, you're accusing your father of abuse now? Abuse. That word jumped off the screen. Not because I'd used it, I hadn't, but because she was trying to inflate my boundary into an outrageous claim so she could dismiss it. If I was extreme, they didn't have to be accountable. I took a breath and replied to my aunt with the same calm. I said he tried to throw my food away. That's what happened. Then I stopped responding. I went to the grocery store. I bought vegetables, tofu, rice, soup. I stocked my fridge like someone who planned to take care of herself for a while. When I got home, I started cooking slow, grounding, normal. And right in the middle of stirring a pot, the doorbell rang. My heart jumped. I froze. Then it rang again. I looked through the peephole. Laura. Alone. I opened the door a crack. What are you doing here? I asked quietly. Laura's face was tight, annoyed and nervous at the same time. Mom sent me, she said. Course she did. To do what? I asked. Laura lifted her chin. To talk sense into you, she snapped, then softened slightly like she realized how bad that sounded. To fix this. Fix again. I stepped back and opened the door, but I didn't invite her fully in. I stood in the doorway, boundary in human form. Say it, I said calmly. Say what? She asked, defensive. What you want, I replied. Not what Mom wants. Laura's eyes flicked away. She's furious, she admitted. She says you're threatening her, giving her consequences like she's a child. I nodded. I'm not threatening, I said. I'm protecting myself. Laura scoffed. From what? A roast? I held her gaze. From being controlled, I said. From being mocked. From being shamed online. From a father who thinks throwing my food away is making a point. Laura's jaw clenched. Dad didn't mean it like that, she insisted automatically. I waited. She shifted uncomfortably. Okay, she added quieter, maybe he did. But you could have just laughed it off. I almost smiled. Why? I asked. Why is the default always that I should laugh off disrespect? Laura opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked tired suddenly. Not tired like she needed sleep. Tired like someone whose worldview was cracking. Mom says you're ruining family dinner, she said, voice smaller. Mom ruined family dinner when she invited me and fed me nothing, I replied, still calm. I didn't ruin it by refusing to get sick. Laura's eyes flashed. You always think you're right, she snapped. I nodded slowly. I'm right about my body, I said. And that's the only thing I'm responsible for. Laura exhaled sharply, frustrated. So what now? She asked. You just cut us off? I paused. No, I said. I'm not cutting anyone off. I'm changing the rules. She stared. Rules? Yes, I said. If I come to a meal, there needs to be at least one thing I can eat. If not, I bring my food and nobody touches it. No jokes. No lectures. And nobody posts about me online. If those can't be respected, then I don't come. Laura's eyes widened. You're making ultimatums, she said, like it was disgusting. I'm making boundaries, I corrected. An ultimatum is do what I want or else. A boundary is this is what I will do to protect myself. She stared at me like I'd started speaking another language. Then she looked down and muttered, Mom's not going to agree to that. I nodded. Then Mom won't see me, I replied. It was that simple. Laura swallowed. Dad's not happy either, she said quietly. He says you're disrespecting his house. I leaned forward slightly. Tell Dad something from me, I said, voice gentle but firm. Respect doesn't come from me eating meat. Respect comes from him not trying to throw away my dinner like I'm a misbehaving pet. Laura flinched at the comparison. Good. 'Cause that's what it was. She hesitated, then said something that surprised me. Mom was kind of enjoying it, she admitted softly. The whole you being the difficult one. My chest tightened. Of course she was, I said quietly. Laura's eyes looked glossy for a second, but she blinked it away. She likes when there's a problem person, Laura whispered. Because then she looks like the normal one. I didn't say yes. I didn't need to. We both knew. The silence between us was heavy. Then Laura asked, almost reluctantly, So you really won't apologize? I shook my head. I won't apologize for not eating meat, I said. I won't apologize for protecting my health. And I won't apologize for refusing to be humiliated. Laura's shoulders sagged. She looked suddenly younger, like a kid who realized the family script wasn't as solid as she thought. Mom's going to flip, she murmured. I nodded. Let her, I said softly. I'm not managing her emotions anymore. Laura stood there for a long moment. Then she said quietly, Can I have some soup? I blinked. What? It smells good, she said, eyes down. I didn't eat much over there. It was tense. I stared at her, then stepped aside. Come in, I said. We sat at my table, the table in my apartment where no one mocked my food. I poured her soup. She ate silently, like she was trying not to admit how peaceful it felt to be in a room without a lecture. Halfway through, her phone buzzed. She glanced, then put it face down. Mom, I asked. She nodded. She's asking if you cried, Laura admitted. My jaw tightened. Tell her no, I said. Tell her I ate. Laura let out a small, breathy laugh, half bitter, half relieved. You're really done, she murmured. Yes, I said. I'm really done. And in that moment, I realized the truth. My family's power over me had never been in the meat. It had been in the expectation that I would shrink to keep them comfortable. The second I stopped shrinking, they didn't know what to do with me. And that was the beginning of the end of the old story. Mom's big punishment didn't come as yelling. That would have been too obvious. My mother's favorite punishments were quiet, social, psychological, the kind that makes you doubt yourself because nothing looks abusive on paper. The next day, I found out what she chose. I didn't get a call. I didn't get a text. I got silence. A full, coordinated family freeze. Dad didn't message. My aunt stopped sending guilt emails. Laura's replies turned short and delayed. And then, 3 days later, I saw it, an event photo album posted online. Sunday family dinner red heart dozens of pictures. Dad carving the prime rib. Mom smiling with wine. Laura and my aunt laughing. And in almost every caption there was some version of, so grateful for family who appreciates what's served. It was petty. It was pointed. It was bait. They were trying to punish me by showing me I'd been replaced at my own seat. Old me would have stared at those photos and felt that sick childhood panic. They don't need you. You're the problem. You'll be alone. My hands did shake when I first saw it. I'm not going to pretend I'm made of stone. But I didn't spiral. I closed the album and set my phone down. Then I did something that changed everything. I made my own plan for Sunday. Not to prove a point, to build a life where their table wasn't the center of my universe. I invited 2 friends over, Maya from work and Elise, who lived down the hall. I texted them, I'm making a simple dinner. No drama, just food. You in? They both said yes immediately. That Sunday, I cooked the kind of meal my body actually liked. Roasted vegetables, garlic rice, a big salad, a lentil soup that smelled like comfort. Maya brought sourdough. Elise brought dessert. We ate at my small table with a cheap candle in the middle. We laughed. We talked about real things, work, dating disasters, childhood stories that didn't end in shame. Nobody lectured anyone. Nobody rolled their eyes at anyone's plate. Nobody used the word dramatic like a weapon. And halfway through dinner, I realized I wasn't missing my family. I was missing the idea of a family dinner, an idea they'd never actually given me. After my friends left, I washed dishes and felt a quiet, steady peace. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Dad. Dad, your mother is hurt. She says you're cutting us off. I stared at the screen for a long moment. I didn't feel guilt. I felt clarity. And I replied with one sentence. Me, I'm not cutting you off. I'm cutting off disrespect. He didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another message popped up, this time from Mom, from a number I hadn't blocked yet. Mom, so you're having replacement family dinners now? Wow. You really are ungrateful. I read it twice. The accusation was almost funny. Replacement family. As if she owned the concept of belonging. I took a slow breath and typed back carefully. Me, I'm eating with people who don't punish me for what I eat. Her response hit instantly. Mom, you're punishing me. For everything I've done for you. I put my phone down. Then I picked it back up because this part mattered. Not for her. For me. I typed the sentence that ended the cycle. Me, if you want access to me, you'll stop mocking my health, stop posting about me, and you'll apologize for trying to throw away my dinner. If not, I'll see you when you're ready to be respectful. Then I turned my phone off for the night. No doom scrolling. No waiting for her reaction. No sitting in anxiety like a child listening for footsteps. Just sleep. The next morning, I turned my phone on and saw a flood of messages. Dad, can we talk? Aunt, your mother is devastated. Laura, Mom's crying. She says you hate her. Mom, fine. Don't come to Christmas. Don't ask us for anything ever again. There it was. The biggest threat in the family toolbox. Exile. The thing they used to keep me obedient. Take your seat, eat your meat, smile, or you don't belong. I stared at the message and felt something strange. Relief. Because if belonging required me to be humiliated, it wasn't belonging. It was a hostage situation. I replied to Mom with a sentence so calm it almost felt like gravity. Me understood. I won't be coming. Her next message arrived like a punch. Mom, you'll regret this. I didn't reply. I started making plans. Real plans. 'Cause consequences aren't threats when you follow through. 2 weeks later, something happened that proved I'd made the right call. Laura showed up at my door again, eyes red, holding a small plastic bag. I brought you something, she said quietly. Inside was my container. The one Dad had held over the trash. She looked down. I took it from their house, she admitted. Mom wanted to throw it away after you left. Like, to prove a point. My chest tightened. And you stopped her? I asked. Laura nodded, swallowing. I didn't at first, she whispered. But then I kept thinking, why are we so obsessed with controlling what you eat? It's weird. Weird. The first crack in her loyalty. She held out the bag like it was a peace offering. I'm not saying I'm on your side, she mumbled. I'm just saying you didn't deserve that. I took the container from her hand and my throat tightened, not because I needed the container, but because someone had finally acknowledged reality without calling me dramatic. Laura sat on my couch, picking at her sleeve. Mom's mad at Dad too, she admitted, because he didn't actually throw it away. She says he went soft. I stared. So Dad didn't throw it away? Laura shook her head. He wanted to, she confessed. But he didn't. He just held it there. I exhaled slowly. That's not better, I said. Laura nodded, miserable. I know. She hesitated, then said almost reluctantly, You know what's messed up? What? I asked. Mom doesn't care about the meat, Laura whispered. She cares that you didn't submit. I sat very still. Because hearing it from Laura, hearing the golden child say it out loud, made it undeniable. It wasn't about dinner. It was about power. And the second I stopped giving her that power, she didn't know who she was at her own table. Laura looked at me, eyes glossy. What do you do now? She asked quietly. I took a breath and answered honestly. I keep living, I said. And I stop paying for peace with my dignity. Laura nodded slowly, like she was trying to imagine what that would feel like. Then she whispered, I don't think Mom knows how to love without control. I didn't argue. I just said the truth. Then she'll have to learn, I replied. Or she won't have access to me. And in that moment, I realized the punishment wasn't working. The silent treatment, the exclusion threats, public photo albums. They were meant to make me crawl back. Instead, they were pushing someone else, Laura, towards seeing the pattern too. My mother had tried to starve me into obedience. All she'd done was feed my clarity. And now the only question left was what would happen when Mom realized her control was cracking, not just over me, but over the family story itself. Mom didn't like cracks in her story. She could tolerate conflict, as long as she controlled how it looked. But once Laura started wavering, once Dad stopped escalating the way she expected, my mother did what she always did when control slipped. She raised the stakes. She planned a family meeting. That's what Dad called it when he texted me 2 days later. Dad, your mom wants everyone together Saturday. She says we need to clear the air. I stared at the message and felt my stomach tighten. Clear the air in my family meant gang up on Anna until she apologizes for reacting. Dad followed with another text, softer. Dad, I know you don't want to, but it might calm her down. Calm her down. I exhaled slowly. The old me would have gone just to keep the peace. The new me knew peace bought with submission isn't peace. It's a payment plan for future disrespect. I replied, I'll meet you one-on-one. Not a group. He didn't answer right away. Then, Dad, she'll be furious. Then she can be furious. I expected the drama to start immediately. Instead, my mother went quiet again, dangerously quiet. Saturday came. No calls. No texts. Nothing. And then, Sunday morning, I opened social media and saw her newest move. She posted a long, emotional paragraph with a photo of the dinner table, prime rib, candles, wine glasses, like it was a shrine. The caption said, It's heartbreaking when a child rejects a loving home because they've been influenced by modern nonsense. We will always keep a seat for her when she's ready to stop punishing us. Keep a seat. As if I was the one withholding love. As if I was refusing warmth. As if she hadn't tried to throw my food away. Comments filled the post. Stay strong, Mama. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. She'll come back. My hands went cold. Not because I cared about the strangers, but because I recognized what she was doing. She was building a public narrative where she was the patient saint and I was the unstable daughter. That narrative was her weapon. It wasn't about dinner. It was about reputation. If she could convince enough people I was unwell, she could dismiss everything I said without addressing it. My phone buzzed immediately after. A message from Mom. Mom, I posted that because people need to know I'm not the villain you're painting me as. I stared at the text. I hadn't painted her as anything. She'd painted herself with every choice she made. I took a breath, then replied with a calmness that felt almost surgical. Delete the post. Her response came like venom. "Mom, no. I'm done being attacked by my own child." I felt my pulse steady. Okay, I thought. Then this ends today. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't rage. I just executed the boundary I'd already explained. Consequences. Consistency. I typed one message. "Me, you've chosen public shame over respect. I'm taking a 60-day break from contact. If you want a relationship after that, it starts with an apology and no posts about me." Then I muted her. Not just notifications. I blocked her. Not forever. Long enough to interrupt the cycle. And for the first time in my life, I didn't sit around waiting for retaliation. I went to the park. I walked for an hour. I breathed like someone who had finally stopped living inside someone else's mood. That afternoon, Dad called from a private number. I answered. "Anna," he said, voice tense, "your mom is losing it." I kept my voice calm. "I know," I said. "She chose that." "She's saying you're abandoning the family," he whispered. "She's saying you're mentally unstable." Mentally unstable. There it was, the nuclear option. If she could label me unstable, she could invalidate any boundary I set. I exhaled slowly. "Dad," I said, "I'm not unstable. I'm stable enough to not let someone publicly shame me and call it love." He was quiet. Then he said softly, "I saw the post. It wasn't okay." That sentence mattered. It was the first time he didn't try to both sides my mother's behavior. "Thank you," I said quietly. "What do I do?" he asked. I paused. "You stop enabling," I said. "If you want a relationship with me, you don't deliver her messages. You don't pressure me to calm her down. You hold her accountable, or you accept that she loses access to me." He swallowed. "She'll hate me," he murmured. I didn't soften it. "Then she'll treat you the way she treats me," I said. Silence. Then Dad exhaled. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll handle it." I didn't trust it completely, but it was more than I'd ever heard him say before. An hour later, Laura texted me. "Laura, Mom's calling you crazy. She's saying you have an eating disorder." My stomach flipped. I felt heat rise in my chest. Not because it was clever, but because it was so cruel and so predictable. My mother would rather invent an illness than admit she was wrong. I typed back slowly. "Me, I don't have an eating disorder. I have a family that confuses control with love." "Laura, are you okay?" "Me, I'm okay. I'm stepping back." Laura didn't respond for a while. "Then, Laura, I think you're right." I stared at that sentence until my eyes stung. 'Cause it wasn't just validation. It was the crack widening. The story my mother had controlled for years was unraveling, not because I screamed, not because I exposed her, but because I stopped cooperating with the lie. And now the final step wasn't a confrontation. It was a closing. Clean ending. A decision that made the boundary permanent without needing anyone else's permission. 'Cause the hardest part about leaving a toxic system isn't the conflict. It's accepting that some people will never choose you over control. And once you accept that, you stop fighting for crumbs. You build your own table. And you let the old one rot without you. The first week of no contact felt weirdly quiet, like stepping off a treadmill and realizing your legs are still trying to run. My brain kept expecting the next ping, the next guilt message, the next demand to fix it. But the silence stayed. And in that silence, something in my body started to unclench. I slept better. I ate without that tight knot in my stomach. I stopped rehearsing arguments in my head while brushing my teeth. I didn't realize how much energy I'd been spending just anticipating my mother's mood. 2 weeks in, Laura started calling, not to pressure me, not to guilt me, just to talk. First, it was small things. "What recipe did you use for that lentil soup? Do you still have that skincare brand you like?" Little safe topics. Then one night, she said it softly, like she was afraid the words would explode. Mom's been talking about you nonstop. I didn't bite. What is she saying? I asked carefully. Laura exhaled. That you're brainwashed. That you hate her. That you're sick. I nodded slowly. And what do you think? Laura was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I think she's terrified. That surprised me. Terrified of what? I asked. Laura swallowed. Of not being in control, she admitted. Of people seeing her differently. Of Dad not taking her side automatically. Of you not needing her. I leaned back on my couch and stared at the ceiling. 'Cause that was it. My mother didn't fear losing me. She feared losing the role she played in my life. The role where she could judge, control, shame, and still call it love. A month passed. Dad texted me once through Laura's phone, respectful and simple. Dad, just checking in. I'm proud of you for taking care of yourself. No photo request. No pressure. No, your mom is crying. Just a sentence that didn't demand anything from me. I replied, me, thank you. That's all. 60 days came faster than I expected. On day 61, I unblocked my mother. Not because I missed the chaos, because I wanted to see if she'd learned anything in the absence of access. There was a message waiting. Mom, are you done with your little tantrum now? I stared at it, and I felt something settle inside me, quiet, final clarity. My mother hadn't reflected. She hadn't softened. She hadn't missed me as a daughter. She missed me as an audience and a punching bag. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my notes app and wrote 3 lines I would live by going forward. Respect is the entry fee. My body is not a debate. Love without kindness is control. Then I took one more practical step. I texted Dad separately. Me, I'm open to having a relationship with you. But I won't be around Mom until she can apologize and stop posting about me. If you push me to reconcile, I'll step back again. He replied after a few minutes. Dad, I understand. I won't push. That was the end of the tug-of-war. Not because my mother suddenly became kind, but because I stopped pulling on the rope. A few weeks later, Laura invited me to coffee. She looked exhausted, like someone who'd been living under a constant storm and finally noticed the weather wasn't normal. She stirred her drink, then said, Mom tried to do it to me. My chest tightened. Do what? I asked. Laura's mouth twisted. Control. Shame. She made a comment about my body at dinner. I told her to stop. She said I was dramatic. She looked up at me, eyes glossy. Now I get it, she whispered. I didn't gloat. I didn't say I told you so. I just nodded. It's not about meat, I said softly. It never was. Laura let out a shaky laugh. No, she agreed. It's about submission. She hesitated, then said the words that changed everything. I'm sorry, she whispered. For laughing. For joining in. For acting like you were crazy. My throat tightened. Thank you, I said quietly. That matters. On the way home, I stopped at a small store and bought a second-hand dining table. Nothing fancy. Just solid wood, slightly scratched, the kind of table that had already survived other people's lives. I dragged it into my apartment, cleaned it, and set it by the window. That Sunday, I hosted dinner again. Maya, Elise, Laura, just 3 plates, warm soup, a big salad, bread, and a dessert Laura brought like an apology you could taste. Nobody mocked anyone. Nobody demanded anything. We ate like normal adults who respected each other. Halfway through, Laura looked around my small apartment and said, almost in awe, "This feels peaceful." I nodded. Because nobody here needs control to feel important, I said. That night, after they left, I sat at my new table alone for a moment. Candlelight quiet, my body calm. And I thought about my mother's post, the one where she wrote, "We'll always keep a seat for her." She did keep a seat. But it wasn't a seat made for love. It was a seat made for compliance. A seat where my needs were a joke and my boundaries were a lecture topic. I didn't want that seat anymore. My revenge wasn't humiliating her online. My revenge wasn't winning the argument. My revenge was building a life where her approval wasn't the main course. My revenge was eating in peace. My revenge was realizing that family isn't the table you're born into. It's the table where you're fed without being punished. They forgot I don't eat meat and served me a lecture instead of dinner. So I stopped showing up hungry for their love. And I built my own table, one where respect is the only thing required to sit down.